Hello, welcome back. I don't normally do 2 live streams in 1 week, but I got super chatted and I had 4 requests to actually talk about D&D Direct. And so like an idiot, I sat out last night finding all the information that you probably wanted to know that you didn't get from the D&D Direct video. And there's a lot of information and it's scattered around the internet like you wouldn't believe. So I've compiled it all today and we're going to go through this. It's probably going to take a little while because there is actually an awful lot of information and I had to go to multiple locations. I'm going to run a poll, and that the intention behind that poll is to figure out what I should talk about first, I guess, or at least what I should talk about next. And so feel free to take part in that. Grab some food, some drink, get comfortable, and we'll get into this. Now I want to say just very quickly, that is that the Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master tutorials that I'm now running is going to be live and active tomorrow, and you can sign up for free and partake in this if you want to on Lighthall. So I'm hoping this will really be of use to you. Hello, Kuros. Okay, so settle back. Let's discuss this topic and give you all the juicy information you were after in the first place, right? Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Well, because I usually do talk about Dungeons and Dragons, that's kind of what I do on this channel. When there is a different RPG that becomes the new thing, then that'll be the thing I talk about. But till then, it's Dungeons and Dragons, and usually Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So the topic for today is actually so what is missing from the D&D Direct 2022 announcement? There was a showcase. There was a video that was up on the YouTube channel for Dungeons and Dragons, and like everybody in the community is making a video or has done a live presentation of some kind, and I've watched quite a few of them, not all of them because there's so many. One of the things that stands out for me is that the vast majority of them don't necessarily tell you anything you didn't find out from the video, and there's a lot of speculation, so you kind of need to sort of find the thing that works for you, right? So I thought what I would do, since that's often how I work, is I would do what other people aren't doing. So what is new for Dungeons and Dragons? And from the poll that I'm running right now, it looks to me that the vast majority of you really want to know what's going on with spelljammer. So we'll start with spelljammer, since that seems to be the thing that people want to talk about, which is fine with me. I kind of figured that might be the case. So we will talk about spelljammer because that's what you want to talk about. The first thing I'm going to say is that basically what seems to be happening here with spelljammer and the material that we've been provided is we've got a lot going on. It's actually been presented in a manner that we haven't seen before. This is the new showcase for how they will present their products in the future. I believe this is what they were talking about. It is basically a 3-book model with a poster map, which is double-sided, and a Dungeon Master screen, which is all cool with me. I don't have a problem with any of that. So let's talk about what this thing is. First off, the Spelljammer Adventures in Space is basically presenting the Astral Planes or Astral Sea as our Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting. Okay, that's the first thing you need to understand. The next thing is, obviously, there are going to be Spelljammer ships in this thing. You are going to be crossing the ocean of wild space or the Astral Sea, and it's going to be about generally hopping from one world to another in the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. There's a release date. It's August 16th, 2022. So it's a little way off. There's quite a bit of time before now and August. So you're going to have to wait. Now, there are 3 books, as you can tell from the image that I'm put up. And those 3 books are made up of essentially everything that they believe you'll need. So first off, there is now I want to say just very quickly, I hope people are aware that Spelljammer has always been a crazy setting, like literally bizarre as. So when you come across anything with this, right, you're literally dealing with the whimsy, the weird, the strange, the funny. There's a lot of that, and also the horrific. There's a lot of horrific stuff in Spelljammer as well. So it kind of covers a lot of different things. So first off, the Astral Adventurous Guide is only actually 64 pages long. It's a hardcover book. I thought it was actually going to be a soft cover, but it's not. It's a hardcover book, but it's only 64 pages. It's for the players and the Dungeon Master, and it presents the astral plane as a campaign setting. So this is the campaign book. It's going to include space-based character options, spells, magic items, deck plans for your Dungeon Master. You're going to need some deck plans when you're running these ships, right? Descriptions of the spelljammer ships, and probably stat blocks so you can use those spelljammer ships and engage in battles. More than likely, there's going to be that sort of thing there, and probably rules around engaging in warfare or ship-to-ship combat, because it's just something that tends to crop up when you're playing in a spelljammer campaign. I know this because I've run a spelljammer campaign for 4e, and I could have done it for 5e if I really wanted, but I didn't. And so there are 6 playable races. There's all the stuff you would expect from the Unearthed Arcana that dropped. That's the Astral Elf, the Auto Gnome, the GIF, which is basically the Hippo people. Hadozi, is it Hadozi? I think it's the Hadozi. It's like flying monkey people or flying monkey creatures. So you can play them. The Plasmoid, so you can play an ooze now. The Plasmoid is basically a ooze creature. And the Thrycreen, which is insect. It's, look, if you've played Dark Sun, you'll know a lot about the Thrycreen. So they're all going to be playable options in this particular book. 64 pages. Now, the next book is Boo's Astral Menagerie. Again, only 64 pages. It's a hardcover book. It is designed primarily for Dungeon Masters. It presents game statistics and descriptions, so that'll be probably lore, for over 60 monsters or creatures. So about 60 or just over 60 monsters or creatures that you would find in world space and the Astral Sea. It's going to include things like, yes, astral elves. Apparently they are a threat. No, I mean, who knows? Not everything needs to be a threat in a creature book. And this is basically a monster manual of some kind. Cosmic horrors, the lunar and the solar dragon. There's murder comets in here. I know this sounds really weird. This is the nature of spelljammer, okay? Vampires. That's a vampire that's a pirate, okay? They just melded it together and call it a vampire. Of course, the giant space hamster and space clowns, and obviously those are the only ones that I could sort of pick out easily. You're probably going to see flumps showing up in this thing potentially, because there is actually a miniature of a flump pirate captain of all things. So I mean, as I said, spelljammer is a trip. Yeah. So the third book is Light of, now gosh, am I going to get this right? Light of Zarix. I think it is Light of Zarix. If I've pronounced it wrong, I'm going to apologize, but I'm moving on. It is also 64 pages. There's a pattern here. It's a hardcover adventure book for Dungeon Masters, okay? So essentially out of the 3 books, 2 of those books are just for a Dungeon Master, really, okay? This is set in the Astral Plane. It's designed for characters of level 5 through to 8, so that's only really about 3 or 4 levels. So you might be wondering, like, that doesn't sound like a lot of adventure, does it? 64 pages. Wizards of the Coast has never been hugely efficient at creating anything that spans along a lot of different levels without having a huge book. So the adventure is supposed to have 12 episodes, and they all are supposed to end in a cliffhanger, with the final episode basically having an overall climax, which is supposed to be quite crazy from what I've seen in the videos that I've been able to pull up. So that was the information I could pull up on that particular part of the book. My understanding is that the adventures themselves are supposed to be, to a certain degree, you can pull them apart. I don't know that I believe that entirely, and they can also be run as like a campaign. It would be a short campaign, but it also sort of shows to you that Wizards of the Coast is probably thinking in terms of, if you're going to play a spelljammer campaign, you're probably not starting at level 1, you're probably going to be starting at level 5 rather than level 1, which is fine. Do I see a space whale? Futurama, alternative incoming, laugh out loud. Seriously, there is. There are space moths. I know there's a miniature for a space moth, Rational Ginger. So there probably is space whales. And if there isn't space whales in this, you're going to stick them in yourself. I mean, I would. Okay, so we're not finished with this product. There's still a few more things. There is a double-sided poster map of the Rock of Brel. I think it's Brel. This is an asteroid city that can serve as both an adventure location and the campaign hub in the astral plane. So, what's on the other side of this? Because it's double-sided. I believe on the other side is a star map. So it's basically just I think it's just supposed to be a map with stars on it, so you can run your space jammer ships over it when you're having encounters with your ship-to-ship battles and so forth. I believe, but don't hold me to that. I'm not completely convinced. I know I saw the map there somewhere, and I think it's that one, but I might not be right about that. There's also a sturdy 4-panel Dungeon Master screen designed to be used with this box set. Now, for those of you who are thinking, well, August is a long way away and I don't want to wait that long, they have decided that they're going to put out something before the official release of this box set to sweeten the deal and to get you to buy it, because the box set looks like it's going to be somewhat more expensive than you would normally pay for essentially more pages. But you do get a DM screen. I don't know if you're going to need it. A lot of people are online nowadays. So there is a free prequel Spelljammer Academy adventure being released in July 2022. Okay, so that's not too far off. What? About 2 and a bit months or 3 months before you can get hold of that. You'll be able to get it off D&D Beyond for free as a download if you have an account with D&D Beyond. And I believe you will also be able to get it off is it Wizards of the Coast's official website if you have a Wizards of the Coast account. And I think that's going to be a PDF, whereas the D&D Beyond version would be just a link to the resource. And I think that kind of works with some of the other resources they'll be putting out over time. So you're going to get an adventure for free that you don't have to pay for as long as you sign up to Wizards of the Coast or D&D Beyond. Now, to sweeten the deal some more, to convince you that you should buy this product, Wizards of the Coast has come out with the Monstrous Compendium. I'm not going to talk too much about that just yet. It basically looks to me as a way to entice people to buy the Spelljammer product. And so this Monstrous Compendium, the first one's going to have 10 monsters. I'll come back to the Monstrous Compendium because it needs to be discussed a lot more than I have. There is no news about the 3 books being released separately. So for those of you who are wondering, look, what if I don't want everything? What if all I want is the monster book and the campaign source book, but I'll make my own adventures? I don't need the adventure book, and I don't really want the Dungeon Master screen because, frankly, I'm playing online and I don't use Dungeon Master screen, and I don't really want the poster map because I'm using digital maps anyway. Like, how's that supposed to work for me? Well, frankly, I have no idea. I suspect that you'll just have to apply pressure to Wizards of the Coast and see what they do. Okay, so what do we got here? I'm just going to go through the chat before I move on from this topic. This is pretty much everything I know about Spelljammer in terms of that box product. There are other elements like the Monstrous Compendium and the miniatures, which I'll come to. Don't worry, I haven't finished. Omar, how's it going? All right. Well, welcome. And Janjvik, hello. How's it going? Yeah. Well, look. There's a reason why I have been doing a lot of videos that are trying to push you guys into the idea of running higher level campaigns. Like, it's fine to run a campaign start at level 5. It really is. The comfort zone, I know, is difficult, but I'm sure there is a way to get around this. So we'll do a lot of videos and help you through that. Hi, Overboard. How's it going? Hi, Scott. How's it going? All right. So, yeah, this is an opportunity for the Horizon Walker Ranger subclass. Would work perfectly in a situation like this. So, based on the fact that I've covered sort of the box set for Spelljammer, and there's still Spelljammer stuff to discuss, but we'll move on to the miniatures. I think that's probably the next best thing. We'll talk about the miniatures for this particular set, because that is certainly of interest to somebody. I know it was of interest to me. I will just move myself around a little bit and then transfer it over, and we will start talking about miniatures for this, because there's a lot of miniatures. there's so many miniatures in this thing. Right. Let me get myself organized. Did I transfer it over? I did. Okay, so it's just YouTube is trying to catch up. Okay, good. All right, so wizkids Spelljammer miniatures. This was really hard to find the information on, because it was all over the place. It wasn't clear. I couldn't find it where I wanted to. I was trying to get into the gallery. WizKids usually has a gallery of all of their miniatures, and they don't appear to have a gallery for Spelljammer miniatures yet, which suggests to me that they just aren't quite finished with all of that sort of stuff. So it's just too soon, more than likely, to start putting out all the details. They probably just haven't updated the gallery. The box sets, you can pre-order these miniatures already. That's not a problem. But one of the things I noticed is there's not even an actual release date. Okay, the release date for the Spelljammer miniatures, Icons of the Realms, it's not clear at all when they are going to be released. I would imagine they would try to release them when the box set is dropped for Spelljammer, but that might not be the case, because as far as I can tell, it just says the 4th quarter of 2022, which is fine. There are 47 figures for Spelljammer, the newest set of random assorted monsters and characters, and there's certainly going to be monsters and playable characters in here. So all of the different races that I've just talked about from the supplement for Spelljammer, there'll be miniatures for them as well, so that you can have a miniature to represent yourself as that character if you want. So based on the fact that there's 47 in these blind boosters, and there are some that you can buy and you can actually see what they are in the kits and sets, what miniatures are likely to be showing up? Well, we know that there's an Astral Dreadnought, which you buy separately, or you can buy as part of it's not a brick, it's the when you buy the whole thing, you get everything as part of it. There's a collector's box as well, which I'll talk about in a second. So the Astral Dreadnought, the Solar Dragon is there. I know, I saw that for sure. A Spelljammer ships coming out. They're all over the place. There is a lot of Spelljammer ships as miniatures. Playable Races, as I said. Space Swine. Yes, that's a flying space pig, for those of you who are wondering. Giant space hamsters, absolutely, and lunar dragons, and much more. As I said, there was a Flumph pirate captain. So there's actually a miniature for that in the kit. Now there's another box. It's called the Spelljammer Collector's Box, and it's not made up of 47 miniatures. It's got 53 miniatures. So there's a few in there that must be special for that particular collector's kit. It's got a huge price tag on it. I'm not even going to tell you what the price tag is, because it's just appalling how big it is. I mean, it's a lot of miniatures, 53 miniatures, absolutely, but it's a huge price tag on it. So Only the most dedicated individuals are ever going to be chasing up that information. I would also like to point out that WizKids has got so many different projects going this year. A lot of miniature projects, but a lot of miniature projects certainly targeted at Spelljammer and some of the other products that are coming out this year as well. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Frankly, I'm not too sure that it really matters. But if you want to have miniatures in your game, you're certainly going to get an opportunity to use them. Now, somebody is asking me, are all the classes getting new subclasses? I do not believe that there is going to be any subclasses included in the Spelljammer sourcebook. So for those of you who are thinking that you would see additions to that, they have said nothing about that or at all. They haven't mentioned it at all. Now, if there were, they would have said something, because it's always a high selling point for a product like this is to, okay, we've got some subclasses. We know that the biggest part of our market are players, and they love that sort of stuff. So let's tell them about it. And they haven't. So I do not believe there will be any subclasses. And also leading up to 2024 D&D Evolution, we are not really likely, 2024, the likelihood of seeing new subclasses being released at this point is really very unlikely. Okay, I think it would be silly on their part, because they may have to make adjustments to what's going on with the rules, and so therefore it would be a pain for you to wind up with a subclass that then suddenly gets adjusted a year down the track, or 6 months down the track, or 18 months down the track. And it's happened to me more than once already. Like the Artificer is a great example of this. So we don't want that to sort of happen. I suspect they will stay away from that. Is it Decado 1628? How's it going? I want the Dreadnought Mini for my my collection. Fair enough. I kind of, it's very, very large. I have a zero interest in what was shown other than that mini. And the good thing about the Astral Dreadnought is you can buy it separately from everything else. So you won't have a problem with that, will you? Because it is actually something you can purchase separately. Good news, good news. Okay, so let's have a look at our poll. So Spelljammer is pretty much wrapped up, and we move on to, the most number of people want to know what wasn't announced. Right. Okay, so I have a list of things that were not announced, and maybe that is the thing that I discussed before we go to the everything else, okay? Which is, there's a lot, frankly. Should we be surprised? I mean, I'm not. Okay, so I think first off, you've got to bear in mind that it's still early in the year, and a lot of their projects are probably not completely finished, and they don't want to talk about stuff until they know what people are getting. Do you know what I mean? They can only do so much. And this D&D Direct, instead of trying to do a promotion live, they've gone with an edited version, which means that the whole thing has been a much cleaner and better presentation than it was before. Okay, so I'm beating around the bush. You want to know about all the things that have been in the pipe that we didn't really hear about. And I'm just going to give you a list, because if I start talking about this stuff, we're never going to get to everything else. But I'm going to read out my list of 14 items that did not get discussed or brought up in any way that I know you are interested in. First one is Dungeons & Dragons Evolution 2024. Like, what's going on in terms of that's development? We've had a few surveys. That's all we've really had. We haven't heard anything else officially. There hasn't been a play test openly. There hasn't been even indications of where the game rules are heading. We don't actually know exactly. A lot of people have speculated that it might be just a slight adjustment, and that is it. I think based on what's happening right now, that's probably not. So they haven't talked anything about Dungeons & Dragons Evolution for 2024. We heard about it back in last year, but nothing this time. Dungeons & Dragons Beyond has been purchased by Wizards of the Coast, which means, or Hasbro, which is also owns Wizards of the Coast. And they haven't really discussed the pricing or any kind of price changes that might occur on D&D Beyond. There's been no discussion about that at all. I'll come back to that because I have some idea of what's going on. Dungeons & Dragons mobile apps. So what sort of apps can I use on my phone that are coming in, on my tablet, laptops, and other mobile devices, basically, when I am traveling around the countryside and I'm not at my desktop computer. This is the way of the future. They know it, we know it, so what are they doing with us? There was no discussion about kids' D&D or Dungeons & Dragons board games. Not games for kids. I'm not talking about 12 years old and up. I'm talking about a younger audience. And really, there isn't a Dungeons & Dragons board game that's been announced in this. I was quite surprised that we didn't see anything. We're talking about Hasbro. Hasbro pushes out board games all the time. We didn't hear anything about the Dragonlance novels that are in development, and it's supposed to be coming out fairly shortly, at least one of them. We didn't hear anything about, and I know this is on their wish list, the book redemption codes from D&D Beyond possibly being in physical books. Now, a lot of people have speculated this might happen. Others have said maybe it's probably not going to happen. Look, we've had no indication of what's going on with that. At this point, the only thing I would say is there's one product that they have announced that suggests there might be something going on, and I'll get back to that. The virtual tabletop. There's actually a virtual tabletop that's been in development on D&D Beyond, and we heard nothing about that at all. We really heard nothing about the Dungeons & Dragons TV series that's in development. And there is a Dungeons & Dragons TV series in development. One is further on than the others. Apparently there's 4, but we heard nothing about what's going on with that. We didn't really get any new video games. We only got a discussion about older games that have either expansions or a final official release dates, which we'll get back to. There's no discussion about the D&D Beyond maps that are locked away and you can't access on D&D Beyond, and they do exist. Probably part of the virtual tabletop, but I'm sure people will use those maps for other things other than just a virtual tabletop. There's also really hardly any discussion about Dungeons & Dragons merchandise. I think more than a few of us were expecting Magic the Gathering tie-ins to Dungeons & Dragons, and there's nothing there. We also have, what's that mysterious campaign they keep alluding to that we have never seen before? It's supposed to be coming out this year, but we've heard nothing about it. Nothing whatsoever. So this is a campaign setting or world that has never been printed by TSR or Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons & Dragons. And there's been not an inkling as to what that is at this present time. And then Dark Sun. Frankly, I'm not surprised that Dark Sun was not discussed, because I don't really think that Dark Sun will make an appearance. Certainly not this year, and probably never. Frankly, just because of the nature of that world. And no matter how much I like Dark Sun, I know that the players at my table probably wouldn't necessarily like Dark Sun. It's just the nature. Dungeon Masters like Dark Sun more than players usually do playing in that world. And then there's one other thing, which is not on my list, but I'm going to say it very, very quickly. And that is, for those of you who don't know, Masters of the Universe, He-Man, the ownership of that particular IP is extremely complicated. But the vast majority of the IP for Masters of the Universe is owned by Universal as a movie studio. Okay? Now, this movie studio in 2023 is going to wind up with the full rights to make books, toys, and other entertainment stuff that isn't of a digital nature, in terms of movies, TV series, stuff like that. Now, Universal makes TV series and it makes movies. That's what it does. It doesn't really have a toy or a book element to it. It doesn't do that sort of thing. But what has happened, and this has been announced quite some time back, is that Hasbro has partnered up with Universal to try to make stuff for Universal using their IP. So the idea is that Universal can then capitalize on putting out a movie or a TV series, and then Hasbro will make the toy line or the book line or the comics or whatever it is that go along with that. And I have speculated for some time, and I'm not been proven right, and probably won't be proven right in 2022, that I think Masters of the Universe may wind up being Dungeons & Dragons 5e compatible. That we might actually see that show up. I don't know in what form, but that's just my Hail Mary play for those of you who are even remotely interested. And I don't know that you'll necessarily be that interested, but I thought I would mention it. I'll come back to these topics, but I know we probably need to get through all the other stuff as well. I'm just going to go through the chat very quickly just to see. Okay, hello John, how's it going? Do you know what's going to be new Goodman game remakes, D&D books, data? No, I don't know what Goodman Games is going to be doing. I would imagine that Goodman Games will continue on their endeavour to remake or revitalize some of the classic core older modules that have been put out over the years. And I think it's always been great that they do that sort of thing. Although I'm quite happy to just use the older modules as they are and not worry about too much. So what's this? I am more interested in that Wizard Coast release. Right, okay, all right. So, hello Negative Space, how are you doing? Now, the info on Baldur's Gate 3 and the D&D movie was pretty thin. Yes, don't worry, I made a lot of notes, okay? We're getting there, okay? It'll happen. We did get the title of the movie, but that was about it, yes. And I'm not really surprised, actually. You are late, Fred. It's all right. Used to call it He-Man, Sheepman by the power of Velcro. Nice one. Okay, so the next topic that we need to discuss, expand on all of the announcements, 21% now. So I will probably come back to the things we didn't hear too much about, but I know that you're all chafing at the bit to hear about all the other things that didn't get really expanded that much during the last thing. And I believe the next topic is supposed to be Baldur's Gate. I believe that's where we're heading next. So moving on to Baldur's Gate. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is a video game that has been out for a while as a sort of a trial. And you know, a lot of people have given the company a hard time for releasing Baldur's Gate as an unfinished product. No, I don't know that that's necessarily unfair. I actually think to a large extent that might actually be really, really smart. And I'll explain why, but let's look at what we actually know, which you were told almost nothing during the D&D Direct video. Okay, so it's pretty sparse. I have 4 things that I can tell you, and that's really about it. So, Baldur's Gate 3 update. The expected date for the final release of the video game is 2023. And I tried to find an actual date in 2023, and I don't believe there is one. They're just saying the year. So it could be the beginning of 2023, but more likely it may well be pushed to the end of 2023. So we're looking at potentially almost 2 years before we get the final finished version of this game. The expectation, my understanding, is that you can expect an update to the landscape visuals. A lot of the graphics are supposed to be getting upgraded, additions to the races, classes, as to be expected, and that will probably continue on as expansions in the future, and then everything else. Like, there's really almost nothing on this game and what's going on. I mean, they keep patching it, they keep adjusting it. So the early open release of the incomplete game has actually, for those of you who are aware of the game and have played it, has allowed for like a really robust play test, which means I would imagine the final product will be pretty close to bug-free and a really solid game. The only problem is it's been play tested for so long. Does that mean that everybody's going to get bored of this game and not want to continue playing it when its final release? I mean, is it going to hamper and damage the final release of this game? Well, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case, because new people are born every day, and in 2 years or 1 and a bit years, there will be new people who will be playing that video game. It won't just be who's playing the video game right now. As far as I can tell, the intention for its release is that it's going to be coming out on PC and consoles. I don't know that that's absolutely, I can't remember if that's absolutely confirmed, but I would imagine it would be silly if they didn't do that sort of thing. Because nowadays, the consoles, you can get upgrades and expansions to that game. So one of the things that people keep mentioning, and that is, well, the story's only so interesting. You can only play through the story mode so many times before, you really can't go through it in a different direction. There's only so many outcomes. And are people going to get bored with this game when it's finally released? Because if you play through the adventure, that's all, you've already done it, right? You've done all the hard work, helped them get their game released. You've already experienced it. Why would you go back? And I expect there will be expansions after the final official release of the game. I don't know for sure, but it sounds to me in a very general way that they're probably going to do what everybody else has been doing, is they're putting out Baldur's Gate 3 as a complete game that you can play, and that I would imagine that they will expand out multi-level play, multiple person play in some way. And I know that a lot of what I've just said is like very speculative and only based on like little bits of information here and rumor here, and that's all I could find on Baldur's Gate 3. And I know that's pretty slim. I mean, it's extremely slim, frankly. Okay, so let's just go back to the chat, just make sure I am not falling behind in terms of what people are saying before I move on to the next topic, since I've kind of said what I needed to say about Baldur's Gate. Oh gosh, everybody's going bananas about Baldur's Gate. How did that happen? Yeah, well, I think one of the things that has been very clear to people is that Baldur's Gate 3 is resource hungry, and you need to have a pretty strong machine to be able to run it successfully. Otherwise, it just comes apart at the seams. Yeah, so and I don't think that I think the game is very fun. Absolutely. So Gus TV has gone, I won't buy any game that's in pre-release or beta anymore. Fair enough, and you don't have to. Right, so moving through here. Bug-free never happens, but yes, it should be superior. Look, I agree, you don't get bug-free, but I think close to will be. I mean, they couldn't have gone to more effort. If they had done a play test of this thing behind closed doors, it would never have gotten play tested as well as it has right now. I mean, that's the fact. The game just wouldn't be as good when it's finally released. That's a given. You have the old Baldur's Gate, all right, 1997, right? Yeah, I mean, you can have your opinion, but I don't actually disagree with what they did. I think it was actually a smart move on their part, and considering how long it takes to develop video games, sometimes it's necessary to keep some sort of revenue or some sort of interest in that game going. Otherwise, it dies off, and then when you finally release it, like, people are over it. They've been waiting too long. You could say that's not the case, but I think that's certainly an aspect to it. Rational Ginger. Well, that's right. You could just play Neverwinter Nights 2 and its expansions. Absolutely. Yeah, and no doubt there'll be expansions to it to deal with the fact that they know that people are getting bored of the current storyline that's playing through. I imagine that's definitely going to be the case. I mean, everybody does that nowadays. It's the model or marketing model for all video games is you make the main game and then you make expansions for as long as you can until the game is no longer playable. And that's essentially what people do. Right. What's this? No, you do a playtest behind closed doors first, then you do an open playtest. Well, no doubt they did have some playtest behind closed doors, but knew that the development of the game was going to take a long time, and so they opened it up. Yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is. I don't disagree with what they have done. I actually think it was a smart idea. So we're going to move on to the next topic because we've got so much to talk about and never enough time. And the next one on my list is actually this book, which, where am I going to put myself? I'll put myself over here. It'll make it a little bit easier. Transition over. Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. Wow, there it is. I have my notes. Let's have a discussion about this little baby. I want to make it clear I'm going to be pretty fast about this because I didn't feel like that there was that much additional information provided in D&D Direct about Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel because it's really already been, they've really said everything as far as I can tell. So the Radiant Citadel is a new location in the ethereal plane that connects adventurers to the distant corners of the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. Big surprise. It's probably the sort of book you would want to pick up and use in conjunction with spelljammer. So, I mean, you're essentially going to get an opportunity to kind of be doing that sort of thing when it's released. Its release date is the 21st of June 2022. There are 13 new standalone adventures spanning levels 1 through to 14, which seems a bit strange, right? So there's 13 new standalone adventures covering from level 1 to 14. So I think it really means it's covering from level 1 to 13, and then you'll finish your last adventure and be level 14, and then at that point you'll have to make your own stuff to actually play at level 14. I think that's really what we're looking at. Each of them have their own map, which is excellent news because the last thing you want to do is have an adventure where there are locations you go to and you don't have maps. But Wizards of the Coast have been pretty good about that sort of stuff, and so makes perfect sense. I'm glad to hear that. Good news. It's going to introduce 11 new Dungeons and Dragons monsters. There's sort of the shard creatures and some other sort of far realm entity, which, I mean, 11 new monsters is not a lot for an adventure book. So I hope we're getting something that's pretty different to what we're used to. There are 15 locations or lands that these adventures take place in. Now, I understand that most of the adventures take place in one location, but maybe some of them take place in multiple locations. It sounds to me that's what's taking place. There's also 12 lost portals where there isn't a lot of information on them, and you essentially are left as a dungeon master to make that connect to your world, your homebrew world, or you build or build out that part of the this adventure. So they have actually left holes, and this is something that has been done in past versions of the game, where they actually allow you to build out from the existing adventure your own stuff, which I actually think is really smart, right? There's a story for every adventuring party, apparently. Whimsical, and then there's also dark and light stuff, everything in between. Apparently there's a bit of everything, so it's not the same tone all the way through, which probably means that if you're going to try to run this as just a campaign and link it all together, that might actually be quite difficult to do. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, can you run a campaign with different tones? I think you probably can. It's just that might not appeal to a lot of players, or particularly dungeon masters, to have a tone that changes and shifts so much. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is the mention of 16 black and brown writers that didn't work in a vacuum. I'm glad that they weren't working in a vacuum. I'm glad they got to see each other's stuff. It's very much being marketed by Wizards of the Coast as, look, we've got this going on. We're hiring people who don't have white faces. Jeez. Okay. And that these people have actually included their own cultural society or cultures into the adventures, which I actually think is quite clever. I don't know that necessarily everybody's going to like that sort of thing. What I want to say is, okay, great, Wizards of the Coast, you've hired 16 black and brown writers to do this, but yet your lead writer, or at least the person sitting beside what apparently is the lead writer, is there's still somebody on your staff from Wizards of the Coast. Okay, and they're white. Like, why does this need to be the standing point? What concerns me is that the community who talk about woke and social justice stuff and all that sort of thing, those who are sort of against it are going to attack this product and these writers, and those people who are like for it, and I'm talking about the more radical individuals who are a little bit out of their tree, frankly, will bite onto this and try to push this up more and actually create conflict. I think it's great. It's good that they are using people who aren't just who they're used to using, right? That's not the issue. So now you've done it. So now keep doing it. But they don't all have to have a brown or a black face. Like, mix it up. Yep. And it should have been that way in the first place. Ultimately, that's what we should be working towards, is like the face color and your nationality or your culture or what country you come from doesn't matter. We hire the people who are going to do the better job. That should be how it works, right? I think this is a very good product. I like the idea of an anthology, which this is essentially an anthology, and I believe that they will continue to do things like this. I just wish that Wizards of the Coast would not pile on and try to trumpet the fact that they are so good because of the fact that they weren't so good in the past. But let's not take away from the fact that we now have an adventure that has a central hub that allows you to travel from one place to the other, and you can probably more than likely pull just a single adventure out of it and incorporate it into your homebrew campaign or whatever campaign you're running, with a bit of adjustment, because there's always going to be some, right? So I think this is a good project. My only concerns is I don't want Deep Space Nine. Star Trek Deep Space Nine is not really what I want, and yeah, that's just a fear on my part. I wouldn't take that as anything to be concerned about, frankly. To a bunch of white people and the concept of inclusion. So first off, we're not talking about not including people. That is what is my concern, is that I do not want the creators of this book being hounded in any kind of way, because Wizards of the Coast has decided to voice the fact that they are, look, we're doing something cool, right? Look at us. Particularly if the product is not good. If it winds up not being a very good product and people don't like it, I mean, that just makes it worse. And who knows? We don't know what's going to happen at this present time. Okay. So now, where are we in terms of? Okay, so companies are. What is this? Companies are having people pay to play test instead of. That's right. So, and frankly, I don't have a problem with a company who has a game who gets people to play test it without having to pay play testers. They had to pay somebody to play test originally. Okay. Why is that an issue for you? You're not even part of the company. I don't know where you're getting this. It's a bad thing. I just don't understand that at all. Frankly, for me, it's irrational. Yeah, so I know a lot of people with, in terms of the Radiant Citadel, that I know a lot of people saw the left side and didn't like it, and they saw the right side and that appealed to them more. I'm not entirely sure why people are thinking like that. I suspect because it kind of does. It doesn't look like it's multiverse or the ethereal plane. When you start talking about the ethereal plane, it doesn't necessarily, the cover doesn't necessarily tell you that, right? So it's like, it's hard to sort of get invested in it. But you know, who knows? God, okay. Right, moving on. So Scott, Sigil 2. Yeah, I think I think you could probably say that the Radiant Citadel is Sigil or Sigil 2. Absolutely. Portals, yes. Now, I think the idea of having portals is a fun idea. It's certainly a good tool for a dungeon master. Absolutely. Now, did I move too fast? Bring a new perspective. Look, we are going to get different perspectives. And the more, instead of using the same writers, I mean, one of the things that we've had from Wizards of the Coast is they're using the same creators and writers over and over again. And so they didn't do it this time. And this project that they put together, this book was in development for a very long time. I believe it was 2 years, which for Wizards of the Coast is actually an extremely long time. From the point of people starting to write until its final completion. They have been working on very, very fast schedules. They might have storyboarded stuff years in advance, but frankly, the pumping out process has been much shorter than it had been in the past. So getting different writers means you get different stories, and different stories is always a nice thing. Okay. John B, what do you got here? This sucks that need to hire someone by race, whatever. So first off, Wizards of the Coast, you've hired them. Make sure you hire them again. It shouldn't be a one-off thing. Okay, now, where's my Dark Sun? Well, look, Philippe, there was no discussion of Dark Sun, and I did actually mention that there was no mention of Dark Sun, and a lot of people were expecting Dark Sun to show up, and it didn't, as a D&D Direct discussion. I want to move that on, though, if I can. I want to get through this and move on to the next thing that we need to discuss. Next, Joe, what do you got here? I never asked what colour is the face of the person that wrote the particular story in the book. Yeah. It was never something that really concerned me that much. I'm just interested in it being good. That's exactly it. You were responding to other people in the thread? Okay. Right, so I'm going to move through this here because I do not want this to turn into a let's fixate on something that we don't need to fixate on. So, yeah. I still think it's worth giving this book a chance, okay? New writers, new perspectives, absolutely, that's the way to go. Stargate Dnd 5e. Well, Stargate Dnd 5e is already out. I'm not sure that I want Stargate in my Dungeons and Dragons. Do you know what I mean? I suppose you could say it. If it's more like Stargate, that would be better than Deep Space Nine. But I don't want that. We've already got that. We've already got a Stargate D&D 5e. Okay? I don't really want a Star Trek RPG included into D&D. What I want is something new. Give us something new, right? That's what we really want. Okay. Let us move on to the next topic because there are many topics to discuss, and this one is a weird one, but we'll do it. Apparently, they have some products they decided to talk about. it really makes me laugh when Wizards of the Coast starts talking about something, and this thing people have been doing this for like forever, but they do occasionally, and they've done it this time again, where they take a product that they've already made in the past and other people have been making for years, and then they're like, look what we did, isn't this great? Okay, so I'm very, very sarcastic, and I'm probably going to give them a hard time about this, but I'm still going to talk about it. So the campaign case creatures. This is a very big box. I imagine it's going to be quite expensive. There are 64 weighted plastic discs rather than it being cardboard tokens like we've had in the past. So we get 64 weighted plastic discs that come in 3 sizes. I believe it is medium, large, and huge. I think that's right. I think small has been left out for good reason, primarily because like you would lose those bits anyway, right? There are 4 colors for apparently maximum flexibility in encounter creation. Like, is this to help you distinguish the player character's token and the monster tokens? I think it's supposed to be just creatures. I'm not sure that there actually are player tokens there, but there may well be. There's supposed to be 40 medium-sized creature tokens, and then 20 large-sized creature tokens, and then 4 huge-sized creature tokens. It's being released on the 19th of July, 2022. There's 5 sheets of fully illustrated, reusable creature clings. So basically, these are sort of sticky things that you stick onto the disc that you can use as a token. And you simply apply the cling to the disc, and you create your customized creature token ready for your encounter. This is supposedly supposed to market for people who can't afford or don't want to use miniatures. I'm not against that sort of thing whatsoever, but frankly, other companies have already been doing this. There are 2 removable custom token storage trays, apparently, and then you also got 1 sort of storage folder for the creature clings. So these 5 sheets that you get, and I imagine a lot of the things included in this product are going to be things you would normally use and you would probably find in the monster manual, the standard monster manual, right? That is, I think, their intention behind this product. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a particularly cheap product, though. For those of you who are thinking, yeah, I'm going to get a cheap product, I don't think that's actually going to be the case. There's also one durable storage case with a magnetic closer and a rope handle designed to allow you to take your tokens somewhere else. It's not a new idea. It's been done before. It's been done to death, and I suppose it was time they put out this product because everybody else has. But yeah, I would imagine a lot of you are probably just going to go and buy somebody else's product that's already reduced in price rather than paying premium prices for something that you can get from somebody else. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah. It's got its uses, but I mean, heck, you can make your own tokens. You don't even have to. I mean, if you don't have time, fine, you buy them. So that was that product. I'm not hugely fussed or even interested in that product. I'll go through the chat very quickly, and then I'll move on to the next thing. Okay, so right. You played Traveller? Okay, your thoughts. Well, I guess for me, Treasure Planet? No, I look, the thing with Spelljammer is that Spelljammer was different for everybody. Do you know what I mean? It was never the same. I mean, my campaign would probably not, Spelljammer campaign that I ran would probably not look like anybody else's. I think everybody was so different with regard to that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm not thinking Treasure Planet as such. Certainly, it could be like that. Character discs, yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering if near the bottom there are, but I don't know that I see any discs that represent characters. But maybe I'm wrong. It's hard to tell. I could not find any images to to tell me whether that would be the case or not. I'm sorry if I wasn't able to find that information. I mean, a lot of this is just so new in terms of its release, it's hard to find that stuff, you know. No, I mean, negative space, I'd keep using those M&Ms. Those M&Ms make great tokens, as long as they don't eat the ones that haven't been killed yet, right? If you use your M&Ms as monsters, you've got to make sure that that's been killed before you're like, oh, I'm a bit hungry now. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah, love eating the ones you defeat. I mean, I did too. I mean, who hasn't done this? I've been thinking of using like these, but they're pretty expensive. Yeah. See, I think the problem is the idea of using tokens was to make it cheaper, and a lot of companies are putting out tokens, and the tokens are quite expensive. And so a lot of people are like, well, I might as well just go buy pawns, which is like a cardboard stand-up in a stand that I can just change out like Pathfinder does, right? Pathfinder pawns are really, really cool, and they are three-dimensional, so it's better than having two-dimensional, right? You get that effect of kind of having like a cardboard or paper miniature. And people make their own nowadays. Poker chips, absolutely. Yeah, poker chips are going to be cheaper for sure. Yes, I used to make them out of cardboard. So if you made them back in 1984 in college, if you're in school, I mean, there's no way you can buy these products, right? But yeah. Yeah, and this is one of the things that you've just pointed out. Yes, the sad truth is that the clings or stickers will wear out and they won't be sticky over time. That's just how it works. So I having dedicated tokens that don't need to be stuck onto these sorts of things probably may have been a better idea, but I think they've been trying to like reduce cost in some way, and instead of using cardboard, they're going to use plastic tokens. Yeah. Yeah, depending on what country you are in, yes, 3D printing is becoming cheaper. But you look, when you say that, it's the North American countries that tend to. North America is really where it's at in terms of 3D printing. If you're anywhere else in the world, the chances are it's very expensive. I know 3D printing in New Zealand, it's not cheaper, not even remotely cheaper. It wouldn't work. I know because my brothers do 3D printing in the basement of my mum's house, and it's a very big setup and it's very costly, but yeah, 3D printing will be a thing for those of you in the right country. Yeah, it's a throwback. Mr. Welsh just pointed out they did this in the past, and so they've taken an old idea, an old product, instead of upgrading it to something else and developing it, they've just used the old idea and brought it back. Now, I'm not against using old ideas because sometimes they are things that just always work. But yeah, you're not a fan of the pawns, you prefer miniatures? Well, you know, but some people can't afford them. You know what I mean? Hello, Pale Rider, how's it going? Your cardboard ones, yeah. I did a video on actually how to make your own proxies and cardboard miniatures. Yeah. The Shrinky Dinks. You missed the Shrinky Dinks? Really? Dear. Yes, pawns are. I mean, I actually wish they had made a pawns line rather than a tokens line. I think there would have been more interest in that, frankly. Yeah, stick with your lollies, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so look, I'm going to move on and talk about the next product because I want to get past this. I mean, these particular announcements are my least favorite out of all of them, and so therefore, not a huge fan of discussing them. So let's move on to the next one. There it is. It's coming up. It should be coming up. And that is, they've got another campaign case. Whoa, surprise, surprise. Okay. Campaign case terrain. That is what we have. Is YouTube going to keep up with me? Right, so this campaign case for terrain, I think, is a better product than the first one I just showed. I think the campaign case creatures, the tokens, is not great, but this is actually much better. So there are 30 durable, double-sided interlocking 5-inch by 5-inch terrain tiles. One of the problems with tiles in the past, these are for your dungeons, for your cities, your wilderness, and your adventures, okay? So it's got tiles for all of that. So you connect the tiles up to make up your map. Now, it's supposed to be being released on the 19th of July 2022, same time as the other campaign case. What I like about this is the older terrain tiles, they didn't stay together. You had to find a way of securing them, otherwise they would move. And so people would go to great lengths as to having set it all up and stick it all down, and then you have to break it all up later. It wasn't an easy and fast process. I do believe that DM Johnny, when he was doing stuff, I don't know if he does stuff now, he did suggest a product that you could put on and use blue tack and a way for removing them off each other so they didn't damage the tiles. But I'm really glad to see they are interlocking, because that's one of the biggest issues when you lay out something. There are 5 sheets of reusable adventure clings. So basically, there's lots of assortment, adventure, wilderness stuff, dungeon features and props and interior features to customize your terrain surface. So campsites, rubble, tombs, stuff like that. Sarcophagi, staircases, I imagine it'll all be there. So this is actually a much better idea. Again, the problem will be that over time these reusable adventure clings will not be sticky, and therefore you won't be able to use them very well with regard to your stuff. One of the things I'm curious about, and I don't know if you can write or draw on these things. Now, if you could write and draw on these, that would be very good. If you could write on it and then rub it off, and if it was, you could use anything from a dry erase to wet erase to a permanent marker, because people do it occasionally. If you could do that, that would be awesome. But I don't know if it is in fact the case. I don't know if you can use a marker on them. Maybe we'll find out more later on. There's one double-sided adventure grid with a wilderness terrain on one side and a dungeon on the other. So basically this is a fold-out flip mat. It's basically a flip mat. We've seen them, Paizo's been putting them out for years, and Wizards of the Coast has put out stuff like this, but usually it's already printed. But these are essentially kind of blank, and so you should be able to write on these things, okay? It's supposed to be 22 inches by 25.5 inches when laid out flat. And you can use them in combination with some of the terrain tiles or on their own, which is great. I think that's probably one of the best features there. Do we need everything else? I don't know. But at least you're getting all of it, okay? There's one storage folder for the reusable adventure clings. So you've got 5 sheets of these things. You would store them in this folder. And there's one sturdy storage case with a magnetic closer and a rope handle as before, designed for you to carry it around. Again, this is not a new idea. A lot of people have been creating products like this for years, and Wizards of the Coast is finally kind of catching up a little bit. They haven't really put out a product like this for a long time. For those of you who are wondering what the heck is the deal with the Dungeons and Dragons movie, don't worry, it'll be the next topic I'm going to talk about. Okay, so don't freak out. There's a lot to say. And hopefully I won't lose my voice. But so with regard to the campaign case terrain, I'm just going to go through the chat and then we're going to move on. Yeah, look, Theatre of the Mind is fine. If you're happy with not using maps and miniatures, then use Theatre of the Mind. I do it all the time. I use a mixture. I use Theatre of the Mind and I use maps and miniatures. A negative space. I am currently using Excel to make monster stat blocks. Okay, and write out all of the rad array formulas. All right. Okay. All right. So your dice rolls are all sort of set up. Sounds interesting. Yeah. Look. I believe that these products are going to be very expensive, and I think that's going to turn a lot of people off purchasing them because they are so expensive. Do they need to be as expensive as they are? I don't honestly. I feel like that just they haven't quite thought this out. Someone there needs to start making the stuff locally, so you don't have to pay shipping and import fees. Well, I think that's probably a good point. But I think, see, Wizards of the Coast tends to get their stuff made by the cheapest manufacturer. That's right. I understand. Not a criticism. That's cool. It's right. Moving on. It's all cool. Look, I believe that most of the stuff gets made in China because China is able to make it cheaper than everybody else. And if they aren't, they drop their costs or drop their production cost to the point they put out all of their competitors, so there's no competition. It's a standard operating procedure for them, right? We know this. It's not new. Okay, it's been going on for years. So I think they've probably made them as cheap as they can. It's just how much of a margin have they put on these things? Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, so Mr. Welch has just mentioned that the Warhammer quest tiles combined with Shrinky Dinks. Yeah, essentially, that's exactly what we're talking about. Exactly. Right on. Right on. But a lot of us are not going to necessarily be using this. So many people are using online stuff. I don't know that this is a product that's going to work out well. Yeah. And, yeah. Anyway, I've said enough about that product. I don't really want to talk about that one. I want to talk about, there's a movie. There is a movie. And so we need to talk about the movie. We will do that right about switching over to let's talk about the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Because they gave us a titillating opening to what we thought was a teaser or a trailer, and then we got nothing. And I can assure you there is information on the movie out there that they could have presented, and they decided not to. I don't know why they did this, but they did. So the Dungeons and Dragons movie that's coming, it's going to be called Honor Among Thieves. It's an adventure film that's co-written by and directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. Both are very good at what they do. It's based on our role-play game. One of the things you need to remember is that Jonathan and John, who are co-writing and directing this thing, they're both Dungeons and Dragons players. They've been playing the game a long time themselves. So they have a vested interest in this. Does that make any difference? Because the original Dungeons and Dragons movie that was put out by Solomon, he was also a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and that did not go well, right? That movie was not great. It's supposed to be getting released on the 3rd of March 2023. So we have almost a year before we will see this movie. One of the things, and I don't know if anybody has realized this or noticed it, is I discovered that Dave Arneson, his name appears as a writer of the movie. That's right. Dave Arneson, who is one of the creators of Dungeons and Dragons, just like Gary Gygax. Dave Arneson, Gary Gygax. Apparently he has been credited as one of the writers for this movie. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I feel like at some point somebody's gone back to Dave Arneson while he was still alive and had a chat with him about this. This is really quite interesting. This means this project may well have been in the pipeline for many, many years, and there's probably been scripts or a story floating around that we really weren't privy to. It's quite a shock to my system to see that there. There are quite a few quite a few actors that are well known in this movie. The ones that stand out for me is Chris Pine, who's the lead. Michelle Rodriguez, she's been very good in movies before, and also Hugh Grant, for those of you who remember his romantic comedies. And then there's also Justice Smith, who did the Pikachu movie not that long ago. All the other actors, I don't really know them. They've done stuff, but they feel like they're very early on in their careers. So they're quite a lot younger than everybody else, or they don't have a portfolio that's quite as extensive. It doesn't look like a lot of these actors are bad actors. It actually looks like they've got a pretty good collection of actors together. One of the things that has been made clear is that Chris Pine had a ball making this movie. Now, actors always say this about their projects, right? They always say their project was so fun to make. That's the normal thing to say. But I kind of wonder how the heck they managed to get Chris Pine onto this movie project, considering it won't have a huge budget. It's got to have some sort of budget because there's going to be special effects involved. But the reality is that I feel like maybe the reason they got on board is because the story was so much fun. Now, whether that's going to appeal to you or not, I have no idea. The storyline is still undisclosed. I couldn't find anything about it whatsoever, other than a little bit of a rumor around the character that Chris Pine is going to be playing. It is going to be set in the Sword Coast. The Forgotten Realms, yes it is. Forgotten Realms again, we're back there. So it should be relatively familiar to people who are playing Dungeons & Dragons and using the Forgotten Realms and the Sword Coast. There's a whole full year of post-production work to be done on this movie. So it's wrapped. The thing has been filmed. It's finished. It's going to happen. That's why they've got a release date for it. But now the post-production, all of the special effects has to be added, all of the sound, all of that work that they do after they film is being done now. And it's going to take them a year. So that sends a message to me, and it makes me think that ultimately this movie has probably got quite a lot of CGI in it. And probably for very good reason. Because a lot of the monsters don't exist in the real world. Okay? And there's going to be monsters in it because that's Dungeons & Dragons. There's no movie poster yet. So it's way too early. I don't expect that we'll see any kind of major advertising being done or promotion on this project till very, very close to its release. The fact that it's being released on the 3rd of March, which is not necessarily peak movie time, I think means that it's probably going to do quite well. It's out of the dead zone. Like January, February, hardly anybody kind of goes to the movie around that time. Just before Christmas and around the Christmas time, yes, but the kind of after that, it's like there's nothing going on. But it's in March, so there's not going to be a lot of competition in March. So I think it's got a good chance of doing reasonably well if it's a good movie and it's fun to watch. Will that appeal to everybody? Who knows? That's everything I could find on this movie, and that, I mean, it took me a long time. But that's really all there is to it. There are a few shots of footage on the movie sitting around on the internet that you might be able to find if you really, if you dig deep. They're not that hard to find really, but there's not a lot out there on the movie, and we'll just have to wait. It's been a long time coming, and it's getting closer and closer. So that's good news. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to have to put in a throat lozenge because I am losing my voice. And then we are going to move on to the next thing. But let's just go through the chat before I move on away from the movie. Because I know a lot of us have been waiting for this for a long time. Or fearing it. Mr. Welch. No, moving on. Jeremy Irons overacting is going to be hard to beat. Yeah, Mr. Welch, you're right. I don't know, was that the direction? You know, Jeremy Irons is a very good actor. So maybe the director and who was directing him was the wrong idea. Mr. Welch, or they could have set the movie in Blackmore. No, it's the movie. The movie is being set in the Sword Coast. That's my understanding, and the Forgotten Realms, not Blackmore. But maybe they're taking elements of the Blackmore and putting it into the Forgotten Realms. I know that might throw a few people out, but anyway. Almost all movies are almost all made in CGI now. I get tired of it, honestly. Yeah, I know how you feel, Negative Space. I like it when actors can play and and create a movie, and there's actually a physical thing there. I know sometimes that's not practical, but I wish they would do it more rather than relying on CGI all the time. Because it's always cool when you take a physical prop or you build the armature or the robot for it and they get to interact with it. Actors are much more convincing when that happens, compared to them having to use their imagination because there's nothing there. There's a little ball with some dots on it floating around. They keep trying to make D&D movies. They need to stop, in my opinion. I don't agree. They need to make Forgotten Realms movies. Well, that's what that is. Neverwinter movies, Eberron movies, Dark Sun movies, Spelljammer movies. Okay, so that more than likely, if this movie does well, they'll make another one. I think it's very, very likely. A Dritz movie would be good. I think Dritz has been done to death. I mean, he's in the. I mean, it does make sense, but yeah, would it sell? I suppose it would. I think Dritz's story would probably sell pretty well. Yeah, Negative Space, I understand that it's not been engaged in the Forgotten Realms. Because, look, even if it is the Forgotten Realms, if the story is good, it won't matter what world it's set in. It won't matter in the slightest. Okay, so let's move on. The movie I've discussed, and we need to move on to the next thing, because it's getting on. So the next topic is probably something that a lot of you don't know too much about, and that is there is a new Dungeons & Dragons starter set. How many times have they tried to do this? It makes me laugh when I consider how often Wizards of the Coast has tried to supplant the original starter set they made for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and almost every single time it's been unsuccessful. I mean, is it funny? Is it sad? I don't know what else to say about this. It's really, really entertaining. I love watching the fact that they have struggled to come up with some way of making the old Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set, Lost Mine of Phandelver, obsolete. And they've always struggled with this. So, this was actually quite difficult to find, little sucker. So Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. It's the new Dungeons & Dragons starter set. As far as I can tell, it has no story or premise currently, or I just couldn't find the information on it. Like, what is the story? It might be a location-based adventure. For those of you who don't know what that just means there's no actual story. There's just a location and an antagonist, and the player characters will interact with them however they will interact with them. And maybe that antagonist in that location has a particular motive that the players can foil in some way. Or assist, depending on what they're up to. So this product is supposed to be getting released on the 4th of October 2022. It's quite a long way off. There will be an early release in Target stores on the 1st of August 2022. This is supposed to be an exclusive deal, which means that Target will get it 2 months ahead of everybody else, right? That's a long time. I don't have a Target store in my country, right? So a lot of us are going to find it difficult to get access to this sort of thing. Unless you're in North America, like, what do you do? Now, it includes an adventure book, which is 48 pages. It has the basic rule book, which is 32 pages. And then there's a set of 6 blue dice, same as the original starter set. There are 5 pre-made character sheets in there, and there's supposed to be digital tools. There are going to be digital tools, some sort of code that allows you to access digital tools as part of this box set. This is the way of the future, right? As you have a physical product and then there's digital tools that enhance it. They did this with Dragon of Ice by a Peak, that starter set, the D&D Essentials kit, right? What I can tell you now is it doesn't appear to have It doesn't have cards, and it doesn't have a Dungeon Master screen. Okay, it doesn't include any of that sort of stuff whatsoever. Surprisingly, and has anybody noticed the image on there? Seems a little bit weird on the box. I'm going to give you a closer look, because there's something strange going on here, and maybe it will be clear if I get you closer to the box. Right now, look very carefully at the two characters fighting that blue dragon. Now, Ted from Nerd Immersion has already mentioned this to a certain degree, but that looks like Hank the Ranger and Diana the Acrobat from the original Dungeons and Dragons cartoon TV series. They've featured them in the artwork on the box. They are teaming up against that blue dragon. That is those two characters for sure. What I also noticed is, if you remember Eric the Cavalier, who had the shield, the coward, you can actually see a picture of him inside the rule book. So they're using the original Dungeons and Dragons cartoon TV series to sell this starter set. They're really bringing out the big guns, aren't they? Now, the characters that you can play appear to only go from level 1 to level 3. So you're only given enough to get yourself from level 1 to level 3, and then after that you're going to have to access the basic game and the SRD to expand on it, right? So it actually gives you less. I mean, the original starter set went from level 1 to level 4 or 5. The D&D Essentials kit went from level 1 to 6, essentially. And this is only going from level 1 to 3, which is like, wow, okay. It's a kind of strange. It's a beginner adventure. It potentially has more than one dragon in it. So there might be more than one dragon floating around at level 1 and level 3. This would be funny. Will this succeed? I want to say now that Wizards of the Coast put out the original Dungeons and Dragons starter set with Lost Mine of Phandelver. And then they tried to do another one where they tried Stranger Things, the TV series, super popular, put out a starter set, beginner box, didn't do so well. Sorry. Couldn't outcompete the original starter set. So they decided, okay, Stranger Things wasn't enough. Let's put out another box. Rick and Morty. We'll do a Rick and Morty box. Starter set. No, it didn't take off. Couldn't compete with the original one. Then they decided to make D&D Essentials kit. That's the Dragon of Ice by Peak. Still can't compete with the original starter set. So if doing this and including those characters as potential playable characters in this starter set doesn't outshine the original starter set, nothing will. Like, if they can't get it done this time, I don't think they'll ever will. I think the original Dungeons and Dragons starter set, for all the things that people say about the Lost Mine of Phandelver and that starter set, I think it was magic in a bottle. I think it did all the things that it needed to do and only had a couple of tiny problems with it. One of the things I love about this particular starter set is you'll notice that the adventure book itself is it's actually got the contents page on the front cover, right? That's a really good thing. When you actually put the contents page on the front cover of something, that makes all the difference in finding everything. Now I'm going to just switch over the image so you can see what's going on here, because I want to talk about this product a little bit, and I think it's worthwhile discussing. So the first thing I want to say is, when you put the contents page on the front, and then they had the index on the back, not in the book, but on the back. It was using all the space that was available. It was so smart, and I think they've done that again with this product. I think that's exactly what they've tried to do, is they've tried to do exactly the same sort of thing. They've tried to duplicate what was magical about the first starter set. And I wish them all the best. There is one thing I would have to say. If you make a starter set with an adventure featuring these characters in it, And does that mean that we're going to see some of the villains from the original cartoon? Is that possible? I don't know. But I know that in Brazil, that the original Dungeons and Dragons cartoon TV series is very popular. And I can see this thing selling out in Brazil. So Wizards of the Coast, you need to make sure that you make sure the supply chain to Brazil is clear as, mate, and ship as many boxes there as you possibly can, because they will buy it. And I'm sure a lot of people will. So pretty amazing, frankly. I think it's very, very entertaining that what they're trying to pull off here. And yeah, I wish them all the best in trying to be successful in this. It would create a whole lot of hassle for me, because I do not want to find that this starter set winds up being the new thing, and then I've got to build a program when I've already built a program for the Lost Mine of Phandelver. Like, that would be a drag for me. But hey, still good for everybody else if it's a good box set. I think the box sets have been actually probably better than some of their pre-made adventures, frankly. I actually like them way more than I do some of their pre-made adventures. Just me. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at this, and I'll go through the chat, and then we'll move on to the next topic. And I know it's taking a long time to get through things, but trust me, there's a lot of material here. Okay. All right. So. Moving along, new starter set for okay, Scott. Fred just got another 3 years of content. Well, I don't want to do content on that. I don't want to do that. I want to run classes, and I don't want to wind up doing another starter set if I can help it. I don't want to have to shift over. Well, I suppose I've just spent $200 printing out all the maps for Lost Mine of Phandelver to full scale, so they fit on my desk. The last thing I want to do is have this, find that this winds up being the new thing. But, you know, if it works, it works. It would be a drag for me. Yeah, needs the animated characters for minis. Yeah, look, if they do a mini line of those particular characters, they'll do very well. Pushing nostalgia. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would do very well. Look, there's a lot of characters too. There's not just those three. There's a lot more. Roddo. Is it Roddo? Roddo 7 parts. Is this going to tie into the other two? Like how the Essentials kit had side quests, side missions that you could use in the starter set? I don't know. I could not find enough information on it. I only just found the information on the official Dungeons and Dragons website by accident, because it wasn't there before. Yeah, I like the shorter adventures anyway, so I always prefer them, and I think they are the best example of them creating adventures quite often, just because you can break them apart a bit. Blue Dragon was prominent for a bit in the Critical Role's Legend of Vox Machina cartoon. Okay. The level 3 boss monster will probably be Tiamat. No, the level 1 boss will be Tiamat. Remember the cartoon, man, they showed up. They were probably only level 1. They were only just given the magic items. Like, here, you're in a magical world, now fight. Like, there's a dragon. Oh no, it's not a dragon, it's a Queen of Dragons. Yeah, Hasbro likes to license, and I mean, I don't think it's not a stupid thing to do. Got to be D&D, everything remotely fantasy, yeah. You're just disappointed that Joyce buys. Really? Okay. Look, if there's a dragon, you shouldn't face it. Yeah? Not a good idea. Come back later. Yeah. Look, it's not a stupid idea to do a box set like this. Like, if this is what it is, which I believe it is, it's not a stupid idea. Yeah, I think the starter sets have been the better products, frankly, that Wizards of the Coast has put out. And the Lost Mine of Phandelver has it's stood the test of time, man. It has done so well. Venger, yeah. Look, if Venger is in this adventure box, that'll be interesting. That'll be very, very entertaining. Well, I don't know. Do you get to go back to the adventure park, or are you stuck in that world forever? That's always an interesting possibility. Yeah, well, there is actually an episode that was planned out, and I believe that if you look on the internet, you will probably find it. Maybe a bit of hunting required, but yeah. Yeah, Fred, I believe that's exactly what's... yeah, it is. I've watched it, and they do make it home. Yeah, look, I totally get it. So you're using D&D to teach them English. Okay, interesting. I've got some good news for you, by the way. I'm also using maps because I'm playing with a group of people who English is not their first language. So theatre of the mind will be difficult. Yeah, look, Here is, I should move on to some of the other announcements because there's some surprising announcements, not just the starter set. So that is all the information I had on that starter set, which has been eluding me for some time. Let's talk about the Monstrous Compendium. Interesting thing, it's sort of a throwback to what we have had in the past. The Monstrous Compendium, been released. Volume 1 is the spelljammer creatures. There are 10 new monsters. This includes art, really cool art. Lore. Is it enough lore? There is some lore, okay? And there's a stat block. And you can access it for free. Like, you can get it for free. Okay? What are the monsters? The 10 monsters included in this free downloadable product from D&D Beyond or Wizards of the Coast. I believe Wizards of the Coast, it's a PDF. I believe D&D Beyond, it is just access to them on their website. What are the monsters? There is an asteroid spider that disguises itself as an asteroid, and then when a ship comes along, it then unfoils itself and grabs it. There's clockwork horrors that are like a self-replicating machine that just tries to make more of itself. It's a virus in the form of a clockwork creature. The Eldritch Lich, which is body horror. It's very cool. I think it really goes back to what people kind of like about Spelljammer and Planescape. It certainly has that element. It is a hideous thing. The Fracton, which is essentially like the Phantom Zone from the Superman movie. Okay? This thing can trap monsters in it. And it can break apart and trap more monsters in it. So it's, or more creatures. There's a gadabout. I don't really know too much about the gadabout. Then there's the, the gadabout I think is like something that goes over you and can help you breathe in space or in the astral sea. There's the goon balloon, which is peculiar. It has legs, it's round, and it's got eyeballs all over it. And where is its mouth? Who knows? Maybe it's at the top. It's a very strange creature, it really is. There's the Nightmare Beast. There's a puppet parasite that can infect you and just use you like a toy. There's the Star Lancer, which is, yeah, that's right. And then there's the, oh God, will I get this right? The Yugdratsty. Is it Yugdratsty? Something like that. It's not a real word. I mean, how do you pronounce that thing? Like, it's not a real word. So they've got 10. And there appears to be an ongoing release, likely every month. So we can expect to see probably every month another volume, another 10 monsters. Maybe not related to Spelljammer, but I would expect leading up to Spelljammer's release, it will be very much focused on that. I think we'll certainly see a lot of Spelljammer creatures released leading up to the official release of the Spelljammer box set. Okay? It's not clear if it's going to be free. The first one's free. There's been some sort of discussion, some murmurings that it will be an ongoing free service, But I suspect, being Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast and a corporation, that they've got to pay for it somehow. And using this as a carrot to get somebody to buy a different product, like the spelljammer book or books, I think we're going to see microtransaction systems in place. I think that's very, very likely that once they get to a certain point, then they're going to be microtransactions taking place. So you buy these particular things. Now, I'm not sure. It's not guaranteed. I don't know. Okay, so it's take it with a grain of salt. What I will say is that if they do it this way, and you get 12 months, 10 monsters every month, that's 120 monsters every year that are new, and then you do that 2 years in a row, then that's 240 monsters. After just over 2 years, you've got enough monsters to make a monster book. Now, they've said that that's not going to happen, but I think it will. I think what will happen is leading up to 2024, when they finally have enough monsters to actually make a monster book, they're going to release them as a physical book. And that the service on D&D Beyond, or the PDFs that you were getting before, will still be available. I think that they will still be there. But if you want the physical copy, you'd have to pay for it. Speculation on my part. But this is the model that we had in the past. What you would do, the Monstrous Compendium in the past, because it's been done before, was a folder, and you get a few monsters, and then you would basically get additional monsters from the magazine that you could include into your Monstrous Compendium. I believe that's right. So every month you would get more monsters, and you would add them in. You could take them out. You could use them like a card, and then you put them back into the folder. And a lot of people still have those folders. But then once they had done that for a while, the Monstrous Compendium, all the monsters got condensed into a monster book eventually. And I think that that will eventually happen. It'll probably take them more than 2 years before they decide to do that. Because, most of their books are roughly about 250 pages, maybe a little bit more. So they're probably going to need at least 250 monsters to be able to make that happen. Because I don't expect that a lot of the monsters are going to be legendary creatures, that take up more than one page. So that would be my expectation. If it winds up being a free service that's ongoing for months and months indefinitely, wow. I mean, that would be very impressive. I would be shocked. That would be very impressive. Now, for those of you who are worried that Wizards of the Coast could not make scary monsters anymore, I believe they can. And I was really quite amused by the creator too when I was looking at the interview that I was watching on him in the process of drawing up these monsters, because he was given stat blocks and a guideline, and then he did his own thing, and oh my gosh, okay. Right, so where are we next? I brought it because I was... Okay, so moving on. It was the pointy 4Ds, D4s. Really? I'm not sure what this is all about. Okay, moving on. Where are we? I've got to find where I am up in the chat. Yeah, so the digital integration tools, I am very unsure, Scrappy. I've got no idea exactly what that will look like. I suspect it will be duplication of what they've done in the past. Hopefully, because they bought a company that knows what they're doing, D&D Beyond, what we get is going to be really good, compared to the disaster that was D&D Insider during the 4E days. You're a licensed ESL teacher? Okay. On Saturday nights? Okay, good. Cool. I like it. Yeah, look, a picture does tell 1,000 words, and some of these monsters are really, really sick. They're really sick. A replicating clockwork creature sounds almost the same as one of the most dangerous creatures in the Stargate Dnd TV show. It certainly does. I was thinking that myself. Also, Lex. If you ever watched the TV series, German TV series Lex. Alex, how's it going? You haven't caught a stream in a while? Yeah, that's because you've been busy. You've had other things to do. Really excited about Spelljammer? Good news, good news. I've told people a lot of stuff. Yeah, and you should hate replicating clockwork creatures. That's the whole point. Yeah, look, yes, D&D Beyond already does microtransactions. Absolutely, you're right. So it would be bizarre if that doesn't happen. Okay. Negative space. I was always tense, waiting to see how they would defeat them. Right. Yep. Decent couple of episodes. All right. Moving on. Dinner. You're gonna have dinner. Go for it. Negative space. Go have dinner. Okay. I'm not hiding the live stream. You'll be able to come back and watch anything that you've missed. It's not going to be a problem. No. There doesn't appear to be a plan to do PDFs. For those of you who are hoping you would see PDFs from D&D Beyond now that Wizards of the Coast owned them, or Hasbro does, that doesn't seem to be the case. Mr. Welch, what do you got here? The binder's problem was putting monsters back to back, and then later adding another monster that fell between these two alphabetically. Okay. You like hard copies? I understand. I like hard copies myself. I'm always worried that PDFs I can lose. But I don't travel now to play Dungeons and Dragons myself, so I totally get it. You know, people want PDFs. Yeah, fair enough. Somebody else should bring some of the stuff as well. Absolutely. Notes on a tablet, laptop. I've done that before. Yep. I started playing during 4E. The characters are so much cooler and ability. So, negative space. I can assure you that if you were a player playing Dungeons and Dragons 4E, it was a good time, and if you are a dungeon master, it was miserable. It started off all right. It was actually quite good, and then later on, you were just miserable. A lot of people still believe that Dungeons and Dragons 4E failed because they decided to go with a more MMO video game style game. But the truth of the matter was that it was so hard to run at mid-range, or sort of just beyond level 5. It was so difficult to run that game at that point that nobody wanted to be a dungeon master anymore. We had a lot of people. There were so many people who wanted to play, but nobody wanted to deal with it because they didn't make a system that would work for dungeon masters. And that was what it was touted as being the thing that you wanted, because it was making life easier for a dungeon master. And it was not true. I know, because I did it. I played as a player and I was a dungeon master. I understand what was going on there. And I also had to try and get people into stores to run the game as dungeon masters. It was impossible. They only had 5 different... No, it was just the type of character class. It wasn't... They had a lot of character classes, but they had... It was the classes were broken up into a different role. So, as Dungeons & Dragons has always been, it's a game where the character you play is part of a machine, and the machine is the party. And so you filled a role within the machine. 4E was built like that, and older versions of the game work like that as well, and essentially 5E should work like that as well, because that's the whole point. It's why it's a team game. I know a lot of them look the same. Okay, so let's move on to doing a discussion about the next topic, which I think is good news, but also rather funny. I thought it was quite hilarious, actually, as to what was going on here. They do these sorts of things from time to time, and they've done it again. So let's have a look at what we've got here, because oh dear, look at what have we got here. This is this time where Wizards of the Coast is trying to get everybody playing Dungeons and Dragons. That has always been my goal. I want it to be standard, like everybody plays it. Like, you don't play Monopoly, you don't play Snakes and Ladders, you play Dungeons and Dragons. I want Dungeons and Dragons in every toy store, every bookstore. I want it everywhere. That has always been my goal. So let's talk about the new news. Wizards of the Coast expanding the languages of different printed books. So the book translations are going to be French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Now, my understanding is there are different release dates for these various books, and they are going to be released in those languages. So for those of you who don't speak English and if you're speaking French, Italian, German, or Spanish, it's really good news. And I'm happy for you. It's good. Okay? You don't have to have somebody try to translate it and do it illegally and all the rest, and breaking copyright and all that sort of stuff. Which, if they don't provide it in your print, do it, right? That's how it is. So first book, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the 12th of July 2022. It's going to be available in all of those 4 languages, French, Italian, German, Spanish. Monsters of the Multiverse is going to be available in French, Italian, German, and Spanish on the 13th of September 2022. And then the Curse of Strahd will be available on the 25th of October 2022 in French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Now, for those of you who are really excited about the new starter box, guess what? The starter set Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is going to be available on the 4th of October, which is pretty much the same time that everybody else gets it, 2022. So the starter box set, the new one, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, is going to be available in French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Spanish is going to work very nicely, Frank. There's so many people who speak Spanish who are going to just gravitate to this. So, the funny thing about this is that I'm pretty sure that some of these books already exist in those languages, in print. I think that the Curse of Strahd does already exist in print in some of those languages. Not all 4, but at least some of them. I believe it might be French, but I could be wrong. I just have something in the back of my mind. I remember, years and years ago, somebody saying something about, having difficulty getting certain books in their language and having to get it in English, and it was hard to sort of translate sometimes. But I'm pretty sure that some of these books already exist in those languages. So I thought it was amusing that came up. But it's still great news. So, where are we? Mike, hello Mike, how's it going? What do you got here? In my opinion, 2E Space Jammer is still the GOAT. That's fine. Just play it. I mean, it doesn't matter, frankly. You don't have to like what they're putting out. And then what do you got here? Palladium's rifts and and carry boxes. Yeah. AJ Pickett loves Palladium. Is it Palladium? Or is it Pandemonium? I can't remember. Okay, anyway, well, moving on. So moving, here we are. We'll just move through this fairly quickly because I want to move on to the next thing. When I was young, I did an D&D and preferred the other game systems like Vampire. Yeah. That's not really what we're here for. We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. You can confirm German. Okay. Scrappy, you can confirm that German has already been in print in some of those books. I kind of thought that was the case. So, yeah. Look, the next, this is a long stream. We're almost at the end of this thing, which is, thank God. But yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about. Okay, so the next thing. Let's talk about the Neverwinter game, because apparently there's an expansion to Neverwinter. For those of you who didn't know, I'm going to be pretty quick about this one, frankly. I'm not hugely excited about that, and I think there's a place for it, but sometimes there isn't a place for it. And yeah, Dragonlance is on its way. I will get there, don't you worry. Okay, so let's discuss the fact that we now have a Neverwinter expansion, and it's called Dragon Slayer. That's right, Dragon Slayer. As far as I can tell, I mean, Neverwinter has been out for a long time. So Dragon Slayer is just a game expansion. It's not another video game as such. It sounds to me that the trailer was voiced by Matt Mercer. I suspect it sounds like him. I'm pretty sure it is. Its release date is June 2022. They haven't stipulated when in June, just June 2022. It will be available on the PC, the Xbox, the PlayStation, and then they didn't say anything else. Like, what else? As far as I can tell, their Tiamat trial will be updated for this in this expansion to make it a little bit more interesting or a bit more difficult. There's going to be new maps, and there's also going to be a dragon hunting mode. That's the whole idea behind this, is that you hunt down dragons. It kind of takes the mystery away from dragons, if you ask me, doing something like that. But to each their own. To each their own. Okay, I don't want to say that much more about Neverwinter, frankly, because I was not that excited about Neverwinter expansion. Instead, I was much more excited about other things. So let's go on to the next topic on my list of. There are so many things to discuss here. Fairly sure that some of you will be interested in this, and some of you will don't give a toss about a new streaming game. High-end streaming game, right? This is what Wizards of the Coast has been trying to do for years. I mean, it's never really competed with Critical Role for obvious reasons. And I mean, should it really compete with Critical Role? Well, they have tried to produce something that is in line with the products coming out this year. Okay, so Legends of the Multiverse. It's a streaming D&D or Dungeons & Dragons play series that takes place in the spelljammer campaign world, basically. The actors they have selected aren't just playing characters. A lot of these people will be also dungeon masters. Okay, so Deborah Ann Wall, I really like her. B. Dave Walters. We've got Gina Darling, I don't know her. Megan Kendrick, I know of Megan. Todd Kendrick, a lot of you probably know Todd Kendrick or have heard of him. Brendan Lee Mulligan, a lot of you probably are aware of Brendan. Abra I struggle with this name. Abra Ayinga. Abra Ayinga, I think that's right. Jenny D. Anna Proza, DJ Knight, Emmy Montgomery, Travis McElroy, I think it's McElroy, something like that. Sunwon Chow, I don't know Sunwon Chow, and Jim Zub. Now Jim Zub's pretty well known. So there's supposed to be a rotating dungeon master process going on here. So everybody here is probably going to be a dungeon master for each of the adventures in the arc. I don't think they're going to have every single person on there every single week. I think that's very unlikely. But you're going to see these people dungeon mastering this game, and it's going to change. How is that going to work in terms of a story? I don't know. It's supposed to be starting on April 27th, 2022. It's supposed to be 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, depending on where you are. You'll have to figure out the rest, unfortunately. It'll be on the Dungeons & Dragons Twitch TV and the YouTube channel. It looks like it's a high production stream. I mean, frankly, that's what it looked like to me. I'm not really into watching Dungeons & Dragons being played by other people. But I mean, there's a place for this sort of thing. So, good. I'm glad. I'm happy for them. If they are going to find some use in this, great, good news, cool. If you get some enjoyment out of this, I am very excited to see Deborah Ann Wall Dungeon Master again. I have to say, I am biased in that respect, in that I think Deborah Ann Wall is a brilliant Dungeon Master. It is a little sad that she has not been able to sort of get her acting career back online, but hey, it happens sometimes. Who knows what the future will hold? Yeah, yeah, I know people were going to laugh about Neverwinter. I would too. Okay. Um, you like Jenny D? I think a few people have asked me to try and get Jenny D to come onto the Dungeon Master Roundtable. I think it's very unlikely, but I can ask her eventually. Is that a crazy halfling with a stuffed... yeah, yeah, like some of the characters are really bonkers. Now, B. Dave, yeah. What do you call him? I said B. Dave. I said B. Dave Walters. Bennett Walters? No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that, Mike. That doesn't sound like anything I said. No, not at all. Don't put words into my mouth. Simply they change the DMs every time. Yeah, they do. They ship them out, move them on. Next person comes in. Yeah, so look, I just don't have time to watch that sort of stuff, and I would much prefer to play Dungeons and Dragons rather than watch it. The only time I would watch it is if Chris Perkins is the Dungeon Master, or Deborah Ann Walls is Dungeon Master. Oh, that's just me. I like what they do. So that is the Legends of the Multiverse, and there's also, I know a lot of people are like, where is Dragonlance? It's coming, don't you worry. I should have probably pulled that up sooner, but I haven't been paying attention enough to some of the stuff that's been going on with the poll that I put out, didn't I? Which I apologise for. But so let's talk about the Onslaught game, which again is highly amusing. This is not the first time they've done this sort of thing. It's not new at all. Should we have seen it earlier? Probably. They've just finally got around to doing it. What can I tell you about this game? Oh my gosh. Do you know, it's ridiculous how hard some of the information is, and so little information provided by Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast. Onslaught, the skirmish war game. This is a Dungeons & Dragons miniatures skirmish war game. It's made by WizKids. Its release date is October 2022. It doesn't even state exactly when in the month, so maybe that's not been nailed down yet. I don't know. There are tactical cards, maps, miniatures with 2 players competing, and the Harpers and Zentarum seem to be what is featured in here. I believe that the idea is that you control different factions from the Forgotten Realms, and you go head to head, 2 players. It's been done before. Dungeons & Dragons 4e had a Dungeons & Dragons skirmish game, which is not very popular, and as a result of those products being put out, so what they did is they put out the main box, and then you would go and buy additional add-ons and expansions, and which I expect they will do with their Onslaught skirmish war game as well. What happened is so few people played that skirmish war game that nobody could sell the boxes of miniatures, which was awesome. They had cards, miniatures, and a map, basically, usually. That was how they were set up, and so they couldn't give them away. They could give them away, but they couldn't sell them to people who wanted to do that sort of thing. And so the price dropped, and then so people went out and bought the skirmish expansions with all the miniatures in them because it was so cheap. So happy days, because I think it's going to happen again. I have no doubt that the skirmish game will not do very well. I'm all the best that it does, but there's a good chance that for those of you who are struggling to get miniatures and wanted them to drop in price, you might have to wait a little while, about a year, maybe a little bit more, but then eventually I imagine the skirmish game will just not sell anywhere, and so you'll be able to get hold of that, and it'll be the sort of thing that you will love. Dear. Yeah, it's funny. It's really funny stuff, I have to say. I mean, what else do you say about a product that has not done well in the past and then they've tried to do it again? It is hilarious. I know that Cody from Taking 20 has insisted that a skirmish D&D game would do extremely well, but I've never. I don't think that's really been the case. In the past, it never really was that way, so why would it be now? I suppose things do change. They said very little about Dragonlance. I did find something for you. Don't worry. I was running or playing 3 or 4 games at a time. Local games closed up, and my group stopped meeting. Okay, all right. Onslaught looks like a relaunch of the 3.5 board games. So it's kind of like that, but no, it is. I would say it's the skirmish game from 4E. I believe that 3.5 or version 3 might have had a skirmish game as well, but I can't remember exactly. And I'm sure that there were skirmish games before, but I mean, anyway, here we. The problem is that Dungeons and Dragons has always been a rebellion against tabletop wargaming, which a lot of people don't realize. The development of Dungeons and Dragons was people getting fed up of tabletop wargaming. So going and trying to do this sometimes doesn't necessarily work. Yeah, you could use them for D&D. Exactly, they were right scale and everything. No, I don't think it's going to do well. But that's all right. Their loss is your gain. And that's always a nice thing, right? Dear. Anyway, skirmish way. So now let's get on to the last thing that I'm going to discuss for today, and in terms of the announcements, and that is what you've probably all been waiting for. I'm really, really bad. I made you wait so long, but here it is. Let's talk about Dragonlance. Some funny things has happened with this. Things that I would not have guessed would actually occur. And that is, let's tell people about something without telling them anything. Let's tell them that we've got something, but we don't really tell them anything about it. That's what happened. If you were watching the D&D Direct, you're like, oh, okay, Dragonlance. We've got Dragonlance now, and they're good. And then we learned nothing more about it. Like, where is the information on Dragonlance? Guess what? It's hidden in the internet, and actually very, very slim in terms of the amount of information provided. Okay, Dragonlance. This is what I got. First off, you're going to get a Dragonlance adventure book. It has no cover art on it, as you can see, and it's called Shadow of the Dragon Queen. Okay, so for anybody who knows anything about Dragonlance, you'll almost immediately recognize the idea of the Dragon Queen. That's not going to be a new thing. It's a new story from the opening. It looks like the story itself is starting with the War of Lances, the beginning of Dragonlance. Now, for those of you who ever read the books or saw the campaigns, what happened is we had the War of Lances. I don't know a lot about Dragonlance because I never used the campaign myself. I just read the novels until they started to go pear-shaped. So this is the time that a lot of people gravitate to and love the most. And then there was the cataclysm. Like, everything changed. And we got a different world in terms of Dragonlance. So they've taken it right back to what people originally loved. Smart move, right? Good news. So it's not just that adventure book, but you also get this Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn. It's a battle box. It's basically a box for mass combat battle rules, and all running mass combat. Because Dragonlance involves a lot of open warfare and big battles, and so they've included this box set as well. The release date is supposed to be the end of 2022. They don't even have a specific month for this release. It's obviously still in the process of development, and so they do not have a hard, fast release date on this thing. I suspect it's going to be very close to Christmas. Now, the battle rules box sounds like it does include miniatures and can be used in conjunction with the adventure book. But it was so hard to find any information on it, okay? So the the Warriors of Krynn will probably be miniatures and a map that you use for open warfare, and can be used in conjunction with your adventure book in some way, but also can be used separately if people want to. Here's another time where maybe another big box worth of miniatures might wind up getting cheaper and cheaper, and you can get your miniatures a lot cheaper than you used to if it doesn't sell well. I think it's got a reasonable chance, but you never know. It's not really a board game as such. You know, Warriors of Krynn is not actually a board game where you go through, dungeons or an environment. It's open warfare. And as I said, I don't believe that this product is complete. And the reason I don't believe this product is complete is because there is... Agile Monk, thank you for the super sticker. I do appreciate it. So you'll notice they have only given you a book and a box, and there's no art on it. There's only the word. There's only the logos for Dungeons and Dragons, and there's only the titles. I don't even think the cover art for these products is finished. I think it's still quite some time off. This is the sort of thing that you put in front of a board and say, we're going to make this product and it's going to be called this, but you've got no artwork, you've just got the box. They probably put these together specifically because they needed to show you something, but they didn't have anything yet. That is my suspicion as to what's going on here. That's why there's so little information on it, and why there's really no art other than the trailer. Now, the trailer tells you quite a lot. The trailer was quite cool, but it doesn't really tell you anything about the actual products itself. That is everything I could find on Dragonlance, and there's nothing else there whatsoever, which is really strange. Okay, but I mean, at least I guess we got a blank cover book and a box with a blank look to it as well. Yeah, the cover art does say a lot. Exactly. Yeah, it's not ready yet. Very, very relatable. Oh dear. Anyway, never mind. I don't know even. I don't have no idea who's written the adventure itself. It's probably not Margaret Weiss or Tracy Hickman, because they don't even know that they didn't even know the book was in development. Maybe they're under NDAs and they couldn't say anything. Who knows? But the only books they seem to know anything about was the novels they're writing. Yeah, they're all black. It's a black book. Awesome. There. Never mind. But yeah, look. At least we know it's coming. Okay, there's no more. It might be coming sort of going on. Dragonlance it's coming. It'll be here eventually. The problem with Dragonlance is the Dragonlance was always an odd setting, and frankly, I think people are going to struggle running adventures in that world. It's just Dragonlance was just, it worked fine in the novels. I don't know how well it will work as a campaign, because I've never done it myself, so I don't know. I've always found that it, you get some really weird stories out of the types of campaigns that were run in a Dragonlance environment. Yeah, they did have to show something, didn't they? Exactly. And they showed you a blank box. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember Duke Nukem Forever. I don't. Did I even play it? I can't play video games anymore. Yeah, cover art would have been nice, but apparently there aren't any. Not yet. You have to wait a little bit longer. Months and months, still in development. The hype will be difficult to sustain. Absolutely, I agree. Okay, so that is all of the stuff that was announced. Now, there are actually a couple of other things, but I don't know that my voice is going to hold up to talking about them. So I am going to talk about them. For those of you who really want to stick around, I will talk about them because I think there is a place for talking about them. The only thing that I think we need to realise with some of the things that are going on with the Wizards of the Coast is that they can't release and tell you everything about everything because they probably don't have it ready yet. So why would they tell you about things they can't tell you yet because it's not fully developed? And Dragonlance, as you can see, is obviously not fully developed. So what did Wizards of the Coast miss out? Now, I kind of alluded to a lot of that already, but I'm going to go over it and talk about the things that I think need a little bit more fleshing out, and the things that I think have a place in some sort of communication this year. And I need to do it without losing my voice, and I'm going to struggle, but we'll try. Okay, so first off, Dungeons & Dragons Evolution, being released in 2024, part of the 50th anniversary. What is the deal? What's going on here? Like, here's the thing for me. I know there's a playtest taking place. It's private. It's not being disclosed. It's what you would expect, okay? But none of us really know exactly where the game is going. The only thing we know is based on the surveys we give, which are often not necessarily asking the right questions about what would happen to the game in the future. I believe that there will be quite a few changes to Dungeons & Dragons. I don't believe that 5.5 or 6e, for whatever people want to call it, or evolution, D&D evolution, I believe there will be quite a few things that are adjusted. We've already seen this happen. If you've played the game from the beginning and played it back from back in 2014, you know the game is adjusted and changed quite a lot. Not just at the character class level, okay? Not just at the race level, not just at the background level. It has changed even at the core rules, have even adjusted over time as a product of pressure, and they're deciding that things don't work quite so well. I would have liked to have seen some sort of open playtest or transparency as to where the direction of the game is so that people could participate. I've kind of said this before, that's how I feel about it. I think that's the best way to go with any kind of game and an adjustment you make, so that you don't balls it up. But that doesn't seem to be happening. And I feel like they've left it way too late because they need to have enough time to get it all done and then printed and then shipped. So I think a lot of it's already hard-baked, honestly. That's what I think in terms of D&D evolution and what's going on there. Okay? I feel like somehow Wizards of the Coast has lost the understanding of the community at some point. Somewhere along the line, there's been a dissection. And I am concerned that that dissection may be harmful for the game. Because I don't want them to put out whatever they do in 2024 and then have to 5 years later or 10 years later, or probably more like 5 years later, have to make adjustments to make the game more accessible to a younger audience or to people streaming games. Like, make 3 versions of the game. Super, super simple. 5-year-old can figure it out. Strip out some of the stuff. Make the standard game, which is pretty much what we're playing now. And then the advanced game, a lot of variant rules that people add in. Like, build the game like that. The other thing is Dungeons & Dragons Beyond pricing changes. One of the things I noticed is that on D&D Beyond, some of these new products are being charged the digital version at full price, as if you are paying for a physical product. And then they put a discount, 20% off. I saw that happened. That definitely happened. And I feel like Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro is probably pricing themselves way too high. I think the original owners of D&D Beyond had a far better idea of what was going on. I think they're assuming that a digital product should be just as valuable as a physical product. And that would make them significantly more money, and I think it's absolutely the wrong way to go. I don't want to see that happen in the game because it would just put too many people off and they would get frustrated, and we don't want that to happen. So they don't need to do this. I know they've just paid. They've paid a lot for D&D Beyond. I know they paid a lot of money. Okay, it's a huge amount of money. It was $146 million. So they've got to make their money back. But don't get crazy about this sort of stuff. Remember, Fandom, the company that originally owned D&D Beyond, had to pay a licensing fee to WizKids. There's no licensing fee anymore. So you would think that the price of D&D Beyond products would drop. And yet, I don't really see that happening. Am I wrong? You can correct me if I am wrong about that, but I do not believe that is in fact taking place. I believe that the price is going to go up, and that is just wacky. Sorry, I need to get a bit more water into me. And okay, so for those of you who haven't figured it out, right now I think it's rant time for me. I'm going to get a little bit angry. For a person who has been trying for years to figure out how to make Dungeons and Dragons accessible to everybody, I am going to get kind of fed up. And okay, so that's what's going on with that. I hope that they correct their thinking on this, but I don't think they will. I just don't see it happening. Let's just pray. Who do we pray to? Anyway, Dungeons and Dragons mobile apps, like a cell phone and a tablet. These things, I mean, the cell phone in particular. Everybody's got so many people have got smartphones. Not everybody, but so many people got smartphones, and playing Dungeons and Dragons or using various tools on your phone that are related to Dungeons and Dragons, that is going to be the way of the future rather than pencil and paper. And we don't really see anything announced about that. They've got to do it. It's not something they can just leave. Otherwise, somebody else is going to pick it up. And I know that other people are trying to do that because I have people approach me all the time to try and talk about their products, their Kickstarters, and the things they're trying to sell to you. So I generally turn them down. But the reality is, what is the point in buying up D&D Direct, D&D Beyond, and not having something ready in terms of a mobile app? They could easily buy up some of the other mobile apps and integrate them into their own company. But will they price themselves out of the market by just getting too greedy? I don't know. I want to see Dungeons and Dragons board games. Like, we really haven't had a Dungeons and Dragons board game for a long time. One that can be played by kids and adults, so that the parents can sit down with their kids and play it. Or a board game that can be played by kids and can be played by adults, and everybody will be perfectly happy. And we didn't get anything like that. And I think that's crazy. Like, will that happen later on? Will we find out there's a spelljammer board game coming out later on? Maybe there will be. I don't know. The dragonlance novels, like these things, there's 3 of them coming, right? One this year. I don't know when the second one's coming. I can't remember. And we got no discussion about that. Now, is that because Wizards of the Coast not really making, it's not their product completely, and it's going through, is it Penguin Books and Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, and they don't really want to advertise it because, like, you know, they only make a little bit of licensing fee off it, or they've just got the licensing fee for it. But I mean, they wouldn't get any of that, which is like, oh, come on, do that. You know, people want that. It would help and link it all up, but we didn't get anything like that. I think that a book redemption code for D&D Beyond in physical books would have to be something that is printed on a page, which means they'd have to wrap each book. They'd have to wrap each book, wouldn't they? I don't know that this is necessarily going to happen, because you remember, they've still got to make their money. It's not like D&D Beyond it doesn't have any overheads. I don't think that we're necessarily going to see them in everything. I think something like a box set, like the new starter set, I think that makes perfect sense. I think it's quite possible you'll get a redemption code for Dragons of Stormwreck Isle in the box. I think you'll get that for D&D Beyond. I think that's very, very likely. They did something very similar with the D&D Essentials kit, Dragon of Ice by Peak. The virtual tabletop. Look, we know that D&D Beyond has got a virtual tabletop in development. So we didn't hear anything about that. It must be quite some way off in terms of its process of completion. Probably why we didn't hear anything. The Dungeons and Dragons TV series are probably still in the script writing phase rather than anything else, which is probably why we didn't hear that. And new video games, I don't think we're going to get any new video games unless they're on a phone anytime soon. I'm kind of a bit disappointed by that. I'm surprised that the D&D Beyond maps haven't not been made available. I mean, are they waiting till the whole library is completed or something like that? I mean, I don't know everything. I'm surprised we didn't get a lot of merch discussed. Maybe we're going to get another one of these later on. But yeah, I mean, there are things that I feel like there could have been a bit more. But anyway, it's beside the point. I've had my rant. For those of you who have hung around for so long, well done. I mean, good Lord. It's been it's almost 2.5 hours, and my voice is gone. And hopefully I still got a voice to run the class tomorrow. That'll be an interesting one. Let me get my head in the right space and just say thank you to everybody who showed up for this stream. I do appreciate it. I hope it was of use to you and that you found the information that you finally were looking for. Wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends, and be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. All right.